Welcome to SportsbookReview.com. You are watching college football with Gary and
Chris.
Of course, lots to discuss today, but first, if you like the video, go ahead and give it a like, a thumbs up, whatever you want to call it, and share the video out. Make sure you're subscribed. That way you get all of our content going throughout the season. We have actually got real football to discuss today. That's right, the Big 12. We are going to talk about our preview for the Big 12 season, the 2020 season. Whatever it may look like, we do have a schedule now. So we're going to go ahead and dive into it and see what we can make out of it. Our first topic will be the Baylor Bears. Dave Aranda's team, he is taking over after a few years over at LSU. He won a national championship last year. Their win total before all this mess was 7.5 at most sports books. Obviously, you can throw that away, just rip it up, put it in the garbage, toss it out. Larry Fedora comes in as the offensive coordinator. Ron Roberts as the defensive coordinator. Went 9-5 against the spread last year, 8-2 in conference, and they returned 51% of their production. That is not very good whatsoever. They are projected favorites in 6 games. They have a talent advantage in 9 games this year. However, their projected win total for this season is only 4.15 per our guys over at CFB Winning Edge. All the advanced analytics, they lost a whole lot last year. I mean, just a ton of guys. Matt Rule obviously leaves to go be the Carolina Panthers head coach. Key players for this year, quarterback Charlie Brewer, linebacker Terrell Bernard, and linebacker William Bradley King, who's a transfer from Arkansas State. This is the perfect season to have a veteran quarterback with 30 starts under his belt. New coordinator Larry Fedora, former North Carolina head coach. It's the perfect fit for an offense that wasn't super efficient, but finished number 33 in yards per play, number 22 in finishing drives. That's points per trip inside the 40. They bring back 8 starters from last season. How do you feel about the offense?
I trust Larry Fedora. So Here's what's weird. Before he got to North Carolina, Larry Fedora was a really good football coach, a very good offensive football coach.
And he wasn't bad at North Carolina.
Yeah, he wasn't nearly as good as I thought he was going to be.
Agreed. Now, he had good seasons, but the last 2 or 3 years, remember, they had a ton of injuries, and they still had a bunch of talent. It's not like he wasn't recruiting. So
I'll tell you this, the defense won't take a step backwards at all. I know they lost a lot of talent on that defense. Dave Aranda is going to get the guys that are there ready to roll.
Yes, you have got that right.
I mean, outside of Brett Vittemel, there might not be another defensive mind in college football as close to Dave Aranda.
This is true. Last year's defense full of talented, experienced players. They lost a ton of that experience.
Lost a ton on defense.
They only returned 2 starters. They've only got 32% returning production. We have seen the wonders that Dave Aranda does at LSU, Wisconsin, other defenses over the years. He brought in Ron Roberts from Louisiana, and Ron Roberts is the one that gave Aranda his first DC job back at Delta State 13 years ago, so it's not like these guys don't know each other. There is not a lack of talent on that side of the ball. Nope. But I would love to hop on the Baylor bandwagon again, but they lose just a ton. And when you've got a first-year coaching staff coming in, it is really difficult to see them be able to do what they did last year. I mean, they had a ton of one-possession games last year that they got on the right side of. It's going to be tough to do that again. They finished number 9 in the country last year in adjusted turnover luck. I think that this team probably comes back to the pack a little bit. I have got Baylor actually at 4-5. They don't have a non-conference game right now. I've got them 4-5, and I think that that's pretty good in the Big 12.
So I have them 5-4. So I
yeah.
don't think they're going to beat anybody that would surprise me, because I think the teams that are more talented than them are a lot more talented than them.
Yes.
And those coaching staffs are stable.
Yes.
So
100%.
They're not dealing with any of the new coaching problems of taking over a team, molding them into your identity, even though, man, Matt Rule had a pretty good culture. It's one of those things where I wouldn't want to change a lot.
Agreed.
But Aranda's going to want to put his stamp on things, obviously, like every head coach will, and there'll be a little bit of learning, feeling each other out between the players and the coaches this year. I think they could shock somebody.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't have them, if I was ranking it, I don't have them pulling off the big upset, but it wouldn't surprise me if they did.
Agreed.
Now, this is a team that over the last couple of years, I mean, Charlie Brewer has had his chance to take out Oklahoma a couple of times, has taken out Texas. Like, he's not afraid of these guys.
Oh, absolutely.
The leadership on this team that did come back and play, they've played with the best this conference has to offer, and they've kind of not backed down from any of them.
Oh, agreed. I mean, here's the deal. Their away schedule, while it's not the same this season.
I didn't look at home and away at all because I don't think we're going to get fans in the stands. And now we're recording this August 16th. Man, I don't know that we might not get, but it won't be a home field advantage kind of
No,
fans.
agreed. But the only home field advantage will be that team doesn't have to travel. That's the only difference, and it really doesn't matter.
They stay in the state of Texas for 80% of their schedule because all the teams are in Texas.
Agreed. But what I was going to say is they play at Texas, at Iowa State, at Oklahoma this year. Like those are the chances to shock.
This is the year that I want to play all those teams on the road.
Agreed.
Because I want to go into Norman where nobody else is there. We're the only people there.
You got that right. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about the Iowa State Cyclones. Matt Campbell moving into his fifth season. Golly. Feels like he just got there.
I was about to say, it seems like he, hadn't
100%.
been there very long.
They went 8-5 in 2018, only 7-6 last year. And while we say only 7-6, winning 7 games here not that long ago was considered miraculous.
Yes.
He has boosted their profile that much. And last year, I mean, obviously, tons of really close losses that they just couldn't seem to get over the hump. However, this season, 67% returning production, 73% of that is on defense, 62% on offense. Here are your key players, right? You got defensive lineman Jaquan Bailey, you got quarterback Brock Purdy, all Big 12 right there. Tight end Charlie Kohler. I'm hoping I'm saying that correct, of course. And they're projected favorites in 7 games. They have a talent advantage in 7 games, and their projected wins, again, per CFB Winning Edge, is 6.29. Now, I like this team more than most. I will go ahead and admit that. Matt Campbell understands how to draw up big plays. I mean, he's an offensive guy. He just always was. This is what he was at Toledo. This is what he has now. Having a quarterback as talented and experienced as Brock Purdy is going to keep that going. They were number 17 in the country last year in yards per play, only number 41 in efficiency, and number 50 in finishing drives. And they only returned 5 starters, but when one of them is that quarterback, that's a big-time deal. They have hit on their offensive line recruits. I expect them to have a really big year this year. I think that's going to pay off. How do you feel on the offensive side?
So I know you like Brock. He's a hell of a quarterback, and pairing him with Campbell, giving some cohesiveness on the offense is a big thing.
Yeah.
I just think all those other players play a major factor. This is the one team I actually am going to knock for not having fans in the stands. They have pulled off big upsets every year. They've done it at home every year.
That's true.
And I think it's because that Iowa State crowd has bought into, we're no longer the doormat of the Big 12. We are here. We're legitimate. And that crowd is as ruckus as any other that you're going to find. I think they are going to hurt. Because I think when the teams that come in are more talented than them, I think they need that crowd to get them through that fourth quarter to close out these upsets.
You might be right.
I got this team same as Baylor. I got them 5-4, man.
I've got them at 8-2 right now, 7-2 in the conference. Obviously, they've got Louisiana to start.
I went back and forth. I almost had them 4-5, and I a lot of that is I believe in Campbell.
Yeah,
and so I'm giving him a couple of notches.
That makes sense.
But I think to do that, staying in conference only now is.
It's tough.
I might be short selling some coaches that last year I short sold, and I don't want to do that a second time around.
Oh, it makes sense. They returned 9 starters on defense, but they are losing defensive lineman Ray Lima, who he could, even though he didn't have a lot of stats, he could occupy multiple blockers at a time, and linebacker Marcel Spears, who was the quarterback of the defense, led the team in tackles, etc. That's going to hurt. Even still, they got a ton of upperclassmen that are coming back on the front 7 and the back 7, and they should hang around the top 25 in defensive SP plus like they typically do. They're kind of the complete opposite of what Baylor did last year. Baylor won 5 one-possession games. Iowa State lost to Iowa and Oklahoma by 1 point each. They lost at Baylor by 2. They lost by a touchdown to Oklahoma State. They were 7-6. You flip those 4 around, even flip around 2 of them, and you got a 9-win season. So,
but at the same time, the ball bounces the other way.
Agreed.
That's record gets a little ugly.
Yep.
I mean, they do play close games.
Agreed. They certainly do. But here's the thing. They were 85th in turnover luck last year. you flip that around to where it even just cut it in half. It cut it to like 40th or whatever, and they'd be better. I would look for that luck to switch a little bit this year.
I don't know, man. I just,
but who knows? I mean, it obviously.
You know how I feel about turnovers.
Oh,
I think people who turn the ball over are not going to just magically. If
Stop
I turned it
turning
over 100 times last year, I'll get that'll go back to a normal rate later. Nope. Sometimes just people are prone to. You got a lot of young underclassmen also on that offensive side of the ball. If the more veteran players turn the ball over, these guys might be better at it, but they're also going to be a lot greener.
That's true.
So
that is true. All right, with that said, we're moving to the Kansas Jayhawks and your boy, Lester the Hat Miles. He is in his second year. It is the first full season of offensive coordinator Brent Dearman. They switched to him
quick too.
I mean, at the fifth game of the year, I think it was somewhere
That's
around there. Obviously, defensive coordinator DJ Elliott comes in. That's his second season. This is a rebuilding job if there has ever been a rebuilding job. They are projected favorites in 0 games.
Yep.
They are talent advantage in 0 games. Their projected win total is 1.21. That is not great at all. Key players, let's go ahead and discuss that. Puka Williams, running back, fantastic, absolute stud.
Just a stud.
Wide receiver Andrew Parchment and linebacker Kyron Johnson. Look, Brent Dearman, he was promoted OC just before the Texas game, and they put up 48 points and lost on a last-second field goal. They put up 31 on Iowa State. They put up 37 on Texas Tech. Even though there wasn't exactly an offseason, the players at least now have a chance on offense to get used to what Dearman wants to do on that side of the ball. That should help them improve from 86th in efficiency and 125th in turnover-adjusted margin. Defense only returns 3 starters. Not a lot of talent on that side of the ball anyway. They allowed a league-worst 36.1 points per game in 2019. Definitely started tackling better as the season went on, so that is a step in the right direction. The coaching staff is working on a rebuild. I would not expect a ton of improvement. Look, 11.87% havoc rate. That was number 126 in FBS last year. Defensive expected points added, number 125. They were negative 0.19 per. The team looks to be a double-digit dog in every conference game. But they got a few bright spots. They got Puka Williams. They got Brent Dearman, who's a Gus Malzahn disciple. The defense still lacking too much, but at least they can score points. They can keep some of these games interesting. Tell me your thoughts here.
I think it's going to be a tough year, too, for my boy Wes. I don't think he's getting blanked. I got him going 2 wins, and I would love for another upset. I think both of these wins are going to be upsets. You said they're going to be double-digit dogs in all their conference games.
Yeah. And now you've got 2 conference wins.
2 conference wins. 2 conference wins. Yeah.
I've got 0 conference wins.
That
I
would not surprise me. I know, I'm giving the Les Mile bump. Okay?
It makes sense. I do have them beating. They open with Coastal Carolina. So I think that they can get that one. And really all they have to do is hand it off to Puka every time to get that. But aside from that, obviously.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's just really difficult.
I got a rivalry game against Kansas State that I'm giving them a nod.
It makes sense.
But once again, I said earlier, we're gonna get to K-State soon. This is a coach that I disrespected last year. I feel bad. I'm going to that well again, but
hey, I understand where you're coming from.
I'm going with my boy Les. Right. He's not getting blanked.
Yeah, you're probably right. I think they can find a win somewhere.
Now that's kind of always been his marquee is he's gonna beat somebody he's not supposed to.
Oh yeah.
He's gonna now before when he was at bigger programs, he's definitely gonna lose to people he shouldn't.
Agreed.
Now he doesn't have any of those on his resume.
Nope, now he's just gotta
beat
it's somebody.
All upside.
All right, let's move into Kansas State. Now, if anybody would have told you even just a couple of years ago that the state of Kansas would have 2 national championship winning football coaches coaching the 2 major institutions in state.
No way I'd have believed it.
Now, Chris Kleiman in his second season in Manhattan, Courtney Messingham, the offensive coordinator, Joe Klanderman is going to be it'll be his first year there. And he's a staff guy. He's, whatever. But look, they went 9-4 against the spread last year. Nobody expected anything out of it. I mean, we were dead wrong on them.
I dogged this team so bad just because I just didn't think they had talent there. It wasn't a knock on Kleiman. If you go back to last year's, I didn't know enough about him to judge him the way I should have, but I just didn't think there was talent at Kansas State.
Wait, look, here's
and I was wrong.
They are projected favorites this year in 4 games. And so first off, they returned 61% of their production. But But projected favorites, there are only 4 this year that they are favored over. A talent advantage of just 2 games. Projected wins 3.99. That's pretty good when you only have a talent advantage in 2 games.
2 games.
Key players: defensive end Wyatt Hubert, linebacker Elijah Sullivan, and quarterback Skylar Thompson is back. Now he's one that people are okay. Like, he could be an NFL guy. I mean, we'll see. He's super efficient and whatnot. But here's the deal: the offense, never anything special last year. Only 84th in yards per play, number 63 in success rate. But they scored on 50 out of 52 trips into the red zone, which led the country. I mean, that is about as efficient as you can get. So while not every play was super efficient, 50 out of 52 trips into the red zone.
When they got there, they did well with it.
Yeah, when you don't squander opportunities, you are incredibly tough to beat. I will say that. This year may be a little bit different. Only 2 starters return on offense. But one of those is Skylar Thompson. So when your quarterback comes back, that's always a good thing. As good as the offense was at scoring in the red zone, 96.2%, the defense was equally as bad. They were they were giving up 33 of 34 trips inside the 20, right? So now if you only give up 34 trips into the 20, that's pretty good. However, when you allow a score on 33 out of those, that's 97.06%.
It's not what you want.
That's really bad.
That's really not what we're looking for.
As bad as that is, they were number 2 in the country on third down defense, so obviously something to build on there. And from there, they've got 7 starters returning, 63% production, and it looks like they're going to have 8 seniors starting, so that's a ton of veteran leadership there.
It's strange that they've got so many seniors, but they bringing back basically half the team. I don't know.
Well, they had a lot of seniors that left. I mean, these were all juniors that were playing behind. And this is the Bill Snyder way, right? It's just the veteran guys always end up starting. And Kleiman hasn't broken out of that yet. Obviously, he hasn't recruited.
I don't know that, the recruiting class that he brought in wouldn't have been guys that would have been starting over these guys anyway.
Exactly. These guys have all been there. They all understand the way that things work. The worst thing that happened to the defense this offseason, Scotty Hazelton left to go join Michigan State staff with Mel Tucker. So one season of Hazelton, and now you're moving on.
I think that hurts.
Yeah, Klanderman was the safeties coach last year. He's been with Chris Kleiman for 6 seasons. He knows what Kleiman wants, so that's good. Kleiman is a championship coach. Bottom line, it means he understands and he teaches fundamentals before everything else, and this team embodies that perfectly. Bill Snyder always did the same thing. They are only going to have a talent advantage in 1 conference game this season, but they're projected favorites.
Kansas.
Yeah, they're projected favorites in 3. Their non-conference game is against Arkansas State. They are likely to win that one, of course. But yeah, they're going to be a problem for everybody that they play.
Yes.
I mean, they lost 2 games.
This will be a thorn in the side kind of team.
Oh, yeah. They only lost 2 games by more than 1 possession last year. They were 8-4 during the regular season. You can look for them to continue giving people fits this year. I mean, it's a rebuilding kind of year. I've got them at 5-5. I got them 4-5 in the conference. But, I think this is when you play fundamentals in a league like this, I think you can get wins.
So I didn't, like I said, I only did the conference. I got them 3-6. So basically, I'm 1 game behind you.
That makes sense. I mean, with
and
3 and 6
Kansas, and that's that Kansas game.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the difference is that I got Kansas pulling 1 upset in a big rivalry game to take a win, and that's it. So that's the difference.
I could see that. I could see this team anywhere from 3-6 to 5-4 in conference. I mean, I don't foresee them.
No, they're not jumping more than 1 or 2 game swings. Well, I mean, they're not going to finish with 2 wins in conference. That they're just too good for that. I think I can't imagine a world in which they only come out with 2 conference wins.
I agree.
And I can't imagine a world in which they have 6 conference wins.
Yeah.
I mean, I think 3, 4, or 5 is going to be where they're going to hit.
Now, that makes sense. Moving on, the Oklahoma Sooners, they have won the Big 12 for basically 200 straight years, it feels like. Lincoln Riley is in his 4th season. Cale Gundy and Bill Bedenbaugh, they are coming back to run this offense for him. Now, don't get it twisted. This is Lincoln Riley's offense. They've got other guys.
I only looked at the defensive coaching staff because I do not care anybody else on that offense.
Alex Grinch coming back. Alex Grinch in his 2nd season as the defensive coordinator. Look, their key players, Ronnie Perkins, who's a defensive end, running back Kennedy Brooks, cornerback Trey Brown. Notice I did not put a quarterback up there. And we'll see what happens. Obviously, Spencer Rattler's the guy, but either way, 59% returning production, only 49% of that on offense. Defense returns 70%. So you've got a bunch of guys that have been in this system now for 1 year. They improved last year. They went from 6.13 yards per play in 2018 to only giving up 5.63 last year. That is the lowest since 2015, back when Bob Stoops was still there. So 33.3 points per game in 2018, down to 27.3 in 2019. That defense was never going to match up with LSU's offense because nobody did. No defense matched up with them. Another year in the scheme, 9 returning starters this year. You're going to see the numbers improve on defense a lot. Now, let me tackle the offense really quick. First season that Lincoln Riley will not have a transfer quarterback starting for him since he was an OC. Spencer Rattler expected to put up video game numbers because everybody does in that offense.
Everybody has.
But, and he was the number 1 quarterback recruit in the country 2 years ago, but he couldn't beat out Kyler Murray, which totally expected, and he couldn't beat out Jalen Hurts, which, again, senior quarterback coming in against a guy that hadn't started the game in his life. A lot to go with. I could go on and on about the offense, obviously, because they're always going to put up numbers, but don't expect a whole lot to change. A slight drop-off, and they would still be elite.
So, yeah, I agree with that. I think Lincoln Riley's going to, and he did this a little bit last year with Jalen as opposed to with Kyler, because two totally different quarterbacks here, is the reason their defensive points per game went down is because while Jalen, and they absolutely in certain games just scored at will, any game that was tight or tough, they weren't scoring fast, even though they were scoring a lot. And therefore, the defense just isn't giving up as many points normally. They had to play elite level offenses. But playing Baylor twice helps bring that down because Baylor brings it down.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of the Big 12 – see, I don't want to get lost in their defensive numbers looked a lot better last year. I think the offenses in the Big 12 look pretty more substandard. Normally, I think the Big 12 offenses are, just
elite.
Let it rip and catch us if you can. We don't play defense. We score a lot. And that just wasn't the case. Kansas State didn't score a ton.
Yep.
Baylor
However, they
never
did beat Oklahoma 48-41.
Well, no, that's the one game they did score a bunch, which is weird. But it's not like Iowa State was hanging 35 and 40 on everybody. All of the scoring went down last year in the Big 12.
Yeah.
I worry about this team defensively. Offensively, I think they're good. They're going to out-talent. I would venture to say you've got these numbers. I don't. They're going to have more talent than everybody they play.
They're projected favorites in 10 games. They have a talent advantage in 9 of the 10 games. Texas,
the only one that I figured, the only one I thought would be close, and I had a inkling the way Texas has been recruiting, they would probably
Texas is up there, yeah.
Be over them.
Projected wins 8.52 this year. So
that's right along where I've got them. I'll tell you, I've got them going 7-2 in conference, because simply the last couple of years, if they haven't gotten beaten by somebody, they've been right on the cusp of just getting got. Last year against Baylor in that first game, it took a hellacious miracle, and Jalen Hurts had to put up a Cam Newton style, just revenge tour comeback in the second half against a really good defensive team.
Oh, yeah.
And he needed the Baylor offense to fall completely apart.
And they 100%.
And they both those things happen, or they get got in that game. And then the Iowa State game also, they got out by the hair of the chin. It's just one of those things where I think at some point in time that coin just flips. Now it's only 2 games.
Yeah,
it's 2 losses.
I mean, I've got them 9-1. I've got them 8-1 in conference.
So I've got them. I would basically have them 8-2.
I've got them losing to Iowa State and then beating everybody else, and that's.
I've got them losing the 2 games. I got them losing the 2 games that they're gonna not want to lose.
Which would be what? Texas and Oklahoma State.
Bedlam and Texas.
Yep, makes sense. We move on from that. Let's talk a little Bedlam. Let's talk about Mike Gundy. The Oklahoma State Cowboys. Mike Gundy in his 16th season at the helm. Casey Dunn is the offensive coordinator in his first season. And then Jim Knowles, defensive coordinator, enters his 3rd season here. Look, 80% returning production. That is number 1 in the Big 12, number 9 in the country. And honestly, I haven't redone these numbers since a few teams dropped out. So I would imagine it's probably a little more crazy. They're projected favorites in 9 games this year.
I'm going to bet the only game they're not favored is Bedlam.
And that would be the one. Yeah.
That's insane that they're favored at Texas.
Talent advantage is 8 games this year. The only ones that they are not favored, or they don't have a talent advantage, Oklahoma and Texas. Yeah.
Two big boys.
Projected wins, only 6.79.
Yeah, that's the Gundy factor right there.
You better believe it.
Everyone knows that he's going to just get crazy, lose his mind, pick a fight with somebody, and lose the game.
And lose to somebody that he's not supposed to lose to.
Yeah, this is the factor where if Kansas doesn't beat Kansas State, they could just beat Oklahoma State because Les Miles gets under his skin and he wants to fist fight afterwards.
There you go. Key players here: Chuba Hubbard, Tylan Wallace is a wide receiver, and safety Colby Harvell-Peel. They are, like I said, 75% returning production on offense, 86% returning on defense, which is fantastic for Jim Knowles. Jim Knowles came from Duke, great at getting pressure on the quarterbacks, etc. Look, I'm never a fan of the longtime position coach that finally gets the call up, but that's what happened with the transition to Casey Dunn, who's been the wide receivers coach under Gundy since 2011.
It's Gundy's offense, though.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. At the end of the day, this is as much as Lincoln Riley is. He's just not as good as Lincoln.
Agreed. Well, here's what happened. Former Princeton offensive coordinator Sean Gleason left after one season to go back to Rutgers. This is the third different OC in 3 seasons, which would normally really worry me if we didn't all know that it was Gundy's offense.
That's it. When the head coach is the play caller, when the head coach runs the offense and it's their offense. Mike Leach could change offensive coordinators every 6 weeks. It doesn't matter.
It'd be the same
every
thing.
4 games. It doesn't matter because it's the same guy.
Yeah.
It just there's some guys that are running their offense. Steve Spurrier was the same way, and it's just the way it is. Gundy's that. I don't care who the OC is. I care about the DC.
Well,
Not that it's ever really mattered at Oklahoma State. They put a lot of defensive guys in the NFL for them to never really be good at defense.
But and here's the thing, you're moving into year 3 with Jim Knowles.
Yes,
he's a good defensive coordinator. You've got a ton of returning production.
I like this team a lot.
Like I said, they've got 86% returning production on that side of the ball. I mean, it's just unbelievable. On the offense, talent absolutely legit. You got potential superstar quarterback Spencer Sanders, future NFL draft picks, running back Chuba Hubbard, and wide receiver Tylan Wallace. And they have an extremely experienced offensive line coming back. 8 returning starters on offense points to big-time production this season. Back to the defense. Jim Knowles, 3 years in, going to be good things. Last year was a down year for the defense. This year, 86%. They return all 11 starters. There is a, linebacker, Amen Agbangbamiga, I hope that I said that correct, is going to lead an incredibly experienced unit. They are going to be able to react a little better on defense this year, I think. There's an easy opening 3 games that could potentially lead to a Big 12 title game appearance, so long as everybody stays healthy. Remember, they lost Spencer Sanders. They lost Wallace kind of early last year. Those were the superstar playmakers.
Yep.
And Chuba Hubbard had to carry the load for the rest of the way. It just couldn't quite get it done. The other thing is I'm kind of curious about the team chemistry after the whole T-shirt ordeal.
That doesn't bother. I think we're way past that.
And we may be. I'm curious to see whether that affects this team or not, because they should be really, really good this year. I have got them at 7-3. I've got them 6-3 in conference. Only losses I've got are Texas, Kansas State, and Oklahoma, and I've only picked Kansas State because they always give him fits. Always.
So I've got them 7-2 in conference, obviously, so that'd be 8-2 overall, and that is to Texas. And I knew he would lose a game. I think he's going to lose a game to somebody he shouldn't. I picked Texas Tech. I don't know why. Matt Wells seems like he could get under his skin, and he want to throw down. But I'm thinking of what coach is just going to give him fits.
But I could see that.
All of them, by the way, are perfectly capable of getting under Gundy's skin.
Oh, yeah.
He seems to be a little thin-skinned to be as tough of a guy as I think he is.
The rattlesnake.
I don't know. It wouldn't shock me if this team goes 10-0.
Oh, it wouldn't shock me. Well, let me rephrase that. It would shock me.
It would shock me because
10-0.
They've never put it all together. He always has a few snafus but they are every bit able to, when they line it up and stripe it up, they could hang with Oklahoma and beat them, and that wouldn't surprise me. They could absolutely beat Texas. He has owned Tom Herman between his ears.
Oh,
okay?
Yeah. But who he has not owned is Oklahoma. I'm going to give you a
crazy
stat.
You're right.
Hold
you're
on.
100% right.
Let me tell you this one. You know this stat about Lincoln Riley?
No, but I know the stat about Oklahoma and how he hadn't beat them.
Oklahoma. This is Gundy's 16th season. Oklahoma, Lincoln Riley has more wins in Bedlam than Gundy does. And Lincoln Riley's only been there for 3 years. That's absurd. He's only beaten Oklahoma 2 times in 16 years. That's pretty nuts. I mean, there's something about that game that even when he's having really, really good years, he cannot seem to get it done.
But here's the difference. The talent gap between, we talk about this all.
Oh, it's the Michigan-Ohio State thing.
Yes, we haven't done it on this SBR show. If you follow us on our other shows and our other networks in the past, the talent gap between, yes, this is a big rivalry, but it's only a rivalry in history alone. Because just the one team is a professional football team where all 22 starters are going to play on Sundays one day. And the other team, maybe a third of them will play on Sundays. And that's a lot of difference.
Oh, it's 100% a difference. And I'm not saying anything bad.
And he's still in these games. This is not Michigan, Ohio State.
No, they're still
where
in
it's
them.
50-point spreads.
It's still competitive.
Still there.
You ready to move on?
Yeah.
Let's jump into the TCU Horned Frogs. Gary Patterson enters his 20th season, 2 decades at the helm. Sonny Cumbie is the offensive coordinator, 7th year there, and Chad Glasgow is the defensive coordinator in his 6th season. Look, last year, 5-7, not very good. They went 7-6 in 2018, though, so I mean, who knows at this point, right? We'll see. 65% returning production this season, 61% on offense, 68% on defense. They are projected favorites in 5 games. They've got a talent advantage in 5 games, and their projected win total is 4.79. I could give you key players, but I mean, it is what it is. Look,
they're going to drop the football.
Here's the thing. Quarterback Max Duggan leads the offense this season. They've got some significant improvement to make. I'll say that. After finishing number 82 in offensive success rate, number 93 in explosiveness, number 72 in points per trip inside the 40, they are below average basically in every major category, and that's never a good thing. Here's the positive, though. They've only got 3 starters returning, so sometimes it's good to get starters back. Sometimes when the starters are really bad, it's maybe time for some new blood, right? So, still, they've got a wide receiver. They got a center starting. They got Max Duggan back. It is what it is. 61% returning production. Okay. They were 2-6 to finish the season last year. That's just not how you want to end things. Look for this group to be kind of run heavy this season, help take some of the pressure off Duggan. Defense, on that side, rarely an issue under Gary Patterson. But last year, they could not stop teams from finishing drives. They were, number 16 in the country.
But it wasn't about finishing drives. I watch all these games because I love Gary Patterson. I have no idea why either. I connected to him a long time ago and here's the issue. They turn the football over so much. Nobody's finishing drives. They're getting the ball on the 35.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, here's the other side of it, though. Gave up 5.26 yards per play last year. That's the second most in the last 10 years under Gary Patterson. They just don't do that.
Yeah.
And a lot of it could be because they turned the football over so much. I mean, the last 2 years.
Defense is on the field constantly.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
It's so frustrating. This offense, every skill. And here's the problem. It's not one guy. It's every skill player that touched the football averages 3 to 4 turnovers a season last year.
Yeah.
It's just like, I don't know what you do with that. And it was the year before. It was the exact same thing.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm with you 100%.
So frustrating. I love this team. I love this coach. And I trust this coach. I got him going 5-4 in the conference. And that is probably the less miles I love this guy bought. Am I 2 games too high?
No, I've got them 4-5 in conference, but I've got them losing their out of conference to SMU.
Because they actually play a legit. See, that's why I just kept it conference, because most
everybody else plays like a nobody to open.
Yeah, and Baylor doesn't have one yet.
But yeah, Baylor doesn't have one. But TCU, SMU, they're doing the 100th meeting between the 2 teams. That's going to be a national broadcast on September 12th.
TCU lose a bunch of those guys from last year. They bring everybody back.
SMU brings a ton of them back.
Yeah, that's
ton of them back. Rough. So and with that offense under Sonny Dykes and whatnot, like that.
Well, we saw them up close and personal when they came to Memphis.
Yeah. They are a legit football team.
That's a hellaciously good team.
As far as TCU goes, this could be one of the most Gary Patterson teams ever. I think. I mean, they're
slow it down, ugly.
Yes,
ugly it up. This is what I'm talking about when the offenses in the Big 12 have not been great. Some of them are elite, and the Baylors and the TCU are just pulling this
pulling
thing
it down. Yeah, no, every game basically I think is going to end up pretty close, other than probably Oklahoma, and they'll get blown out by somebody they're not supposed to. But they beat Texas
I was
last
just about
year.
to say. So like one of their wins I have is against Texas, just because it wouldn't surprise me.
Tom Herman always has problems with TCU.
Yes,
just always. Even 2 years ago, Texas finally got that monkey off their back. They looked really good. They beat TCU, but it was a tight game. And then last year,
but that
they are
TCU
a big
team
favorite.
Was really bad.
Yeah, last year's TCU team was awful, and they still beat Texas.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's going to be crazy. I'm curious to see. I've got them losing the first 4 conferences. This is what they start with: Iowa State, Texas, Kansas State, and Oklahoma.
Yeah, it's going to be. But when you're in conference, I'm looking at in conference only. When you're in conference only for most of these teams, it's tough out there.
Oh yeah. Oh, 100%. The poor Vanderbilts of the world, man. This is not good things. Not good things. Let's move on to the Texas Longhorns. Tom Herman enters his 4th season, and he has swapped that whole coaching staff around. They bring in Mike Yurcich and Herb Hand, of course, the offensive line coach. This is his 3rd season, and he's considered a co-offensive coordinator, I guess. But this is going to be Mike Yurcich's. I hope I said that right. Is it Mike Yurcich or Mike Yurcich?
No, I'm not the enunciation dude.
I know he was at Ohio State last year. He was previously at Oklahoma State. He was at Oklahoma State for a long time. So he gets this, right? He understands this. Defensive coordinator Chris Ash comes back from Rutgers. Obviously, He was the head coach there, but he was also an Ohio State guy. Herman knows all these guys from his Ohio State pool and whatnot. But either way, they went 8-5 last year, went 10-4 the year before that, when everybody exclaimed, "Texas is back, baby!" And I don't know what back is, but I don't think that was it. And don't get me wrong, Texas fans, we love you guys, but y'all have really hated on us over the years. We're not thrilled with the way that you have talked to us and you've treated us. But
I'm not worried about it. I don't care.
But I will say
this. Against them. I talk trash about them.
This is true.
I disrespected Tom Herman because I didn't think he'd earned it.
Projected favorites in 8 games this year. They have a talent advantage in all 10 of their games, and they have a 7.22 projected win total. They are returning 74% of their team this year. Their production
that is a damning statement on Tom Herman. They have a talent advantage in all 10 games. They're projected to win 7 of them.
Yeah. Oh, it's not great.
Who does that speak to?
You got a valid point. That speaks to the head coach. But we'll see what happens this year, right? Typically, 4th year, that's when you want to see exactly what they're going to do.
He's got a leader at the quarterback position.
He most certainly does. And here's the biggest thing.
That's an X factor.
So
he's going to be a problem for everybody else to deal with.
Offense is only 66% returning production. The defense, last year was an issue because they were young, etc., right? But they got 82% returning production on defense.
Last year's numbers were skewed by the fact that they had to play LSU, which normally they'll play a non-conference team that won't put up points against them the way they did. When you're playing Oklahoma, when you're playing LSU, when you're playing Oklahoma State, when you're playing these other teams that these offenses are just blowing you up, it hurts.
Oh, 100%.
This year, not having that LSU team on your schedule, that's going to help.
The key players this year that you want to pay attention to: quarterback Sam Ehlinger, safety Caden Stearns, and defensive end linebacker Joseph Osai. Senior season for quarterback Sam Ehlinger, it could be massive. Their opening slate is UTEP, Texas Tech, and TCU, which obviously they've had fits with over the years. Before they get to Oklahoma in game number 4, offense was certainly not the problem last year. They averaged 35.2 points per game. They will look to do that again after bringing in former Oklahoma State offensive coordinator, Ohio State quarterbacks coach Mike Yurcich, along with 7 returning starters, a ton of talented skill weapons, and 66% returning production. The defense last year, much to be desired. 86% 86th in the country in success rate, which is pitiful, but they had an extremely young group along with a plethora of injuries. Their secondary was banged up every freaking week. It was unbelievable. They bring in former Ohio State defensive coordinator, former Rutgers coach Chris Ash as the new defensive coordinator. Talent is not the issue on that side of the ball. They've got a defensive talent advantage over every offense on the schedule. It's even Oklahoma. It's ridiculous, the talent they got there. Look for them to finally get a dominant defensive line this season. I think they've got that. They've got a great back 7. So long as everybody stays healthy, this team should be really good. They've got the talent to win the Big 12 this season. and they've got the experience to get it done as well, finally. So in Ellinger's swan song, the schedule sets up well. The toughest games are spaced out. 7.22 wins projected out of this team. Don't be surprised at a 9-1 kind of season in a Big 12 championship game appearance. I've got them 9-1 overall. I've got them 8-1 in conference. The only loss, I think they lose to Oklahoma. And then we'll see what happens from there. I mean, it could be anybody. They could beat Oklahoma. They could lose to Oklahoma State, whatever. But that's the way that I've got them setting up. I think Texas is going to have a big year this year.
They could finish 10-0. It would not surprise me.
Yeah.
I got them going 7-2 in conference, 8-2 in the regular season.
That would not surprise me either. Even though I've only got them losing one game, I could see them losing 2 or 3, and it wouldn't be the most shocking thing in the world.
And I got them losing to 2 teams that just, like I said, I think they're going to end up with this record. This might not how it shakes out.
Well, the Big 12 is always like this, right?
Yes,
It's always.
I know that it's not going to be chalk. Outside of Oklahoma the last couple of years, it just hasn't been. And so I think if they lost to TCU and Kansas State, would it shock me? No. If they beat Oklahoma State and Oklahoma and everybody else, sure. That sounds like Texas football to me.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. Let's move on. The Texas Tech Red Raiders. Not exactly the same caliber as Texas. They've only got a talent advantage in 3 games this year. Projected favorites in 3 games, but their projected win total is 4.53. So they've got a shot to beat some teams. Obviously, Matt Wells is the coach going into his second year after coming over from Utah State. David Yost in his second season, and Keith Patterson and Derek Jones will be the defensive coordinators. Look, 4-8 last year, not good. Went 5-7 the year before that. 5-7 is like exactly what Texas Tech is basically every year. Whether
they're
it's
just
Cliff
trying
Kingsbury,
to get to 6-6.
Yeah, every
week in
year,
and week out.
And like we said, talent advantage in only 3 games. That's not good.
But that's going to be Texas Tech football.
You're
not recruiting down there in
Lubbock the same way that you do
regularly
else.
year in and year out.
Yeah,
you can't.
Cornerback DeMarcus Fields is the number 1 player on my list. Number 2 is linebacker Rico Jeffers, and number 3 is quarterback Alan Bowman. Now here's the deal: Alan Bowman, supremely talented, right? I mean, he's ridiculous, but he's only appeared in 11 games over the last 2 seasons. If he can stay healthy, Matt Wells and David Yost, they've got plenty of weapons around him to be able to put up points on pretty much anybody in this conference. Only 48% returning production this season. They couldn't finish drives last year, but they were number 33 in efficiency, which is basically success rate, and number 44 in explosiveness. So they got something to work with here. So that's a good thing. 8 starters back on defense. That's, okay. If they can cut down on the big plays, I mean, they gave up 35 plays of 30-plus yards last year.
My issue is their strength coming back is defense. I don't think that's the strength of their team, though.
No. It's not the strength of the team. The strength of the team is Alan Bowman. How this team goes is how Alan Bowman goes.
Therein lies the problem
on
2
defense,
of the best key players coming back are both defensive guys. I don't know how big of factors they're going to be in winning games.
I'll tell you what happened
That's the
last year,
problem.
right? They had the injury bug last year,
Yep.
and it hit Alan Bowman, but it also hit that defense. So they had some guys that were pushed into action basically on the fly. They were moved to new positions and whatnot, and they were already inexperienced in this new scheme anyway. So, a bad first season netted wins at West Virginia over Oklahoma State, along with 1 possession losses at Baylor, at Kansas, TCU, and Kansas State. Like 1 possession. Like, again, that's just...
But I think that's a tribute to Matt Wells. He's not getting blown out by a lot of people.
No, he's absolutely
hanging with these guys. He's going to make them fight like hell to beat them. I just don't know that they've got the talent to get over a lot of these humps. This is the team I worry about the most.
Now, I'll tell you this. If Bowman and the defense can both stay healthy, they've got enough experience. They got enough in a second year under this new coach and this new scheme, this new style. They've got enough talent to be able to turn a 4-8 record last year into 7-3 this year.
Wow.
But I
You
think
they
it's
get
possible.
to 7 wins without having any of those extra non-con wins available?
I'll go on and tell you this. I've got them at 3-7. I've got them 2-7 in the conference, but it would not shock me if they. But I don't think they'll be able to stay healthy. I don't trust Alan Bowman to stay
I've
healthy.
got them at 3-6, which would be 4-6 if they win their non-con. But I kind of think that's their ceiling.
I don't think it's the ceiling. I think the ceiling is 5-4, 6-3 in this conference. Like, the ceiling is really good. I believe in Alan Bowman that much. I think he is that much of a difference maker. And the defense is not terrible. Like, you cut down on giving up those explosive plays, and like you said, these offenses, they're not going to be as good this season. Now, Oklahoma State will.
Some of the teams
Texas
won't be as good. I mean, like, I'm talking about your TCU. TCU is just not going to be great. Baylor offensively, probably not going to be, like, blighting it up.
Kansas State,
same thing. But also, I would lump TCU in with that conversation.
West Virginia.
We're going to get to them next.
Yeah. I mean, we'll dive into it, obviously. But, I've got them beating Kansas and West Virginia.
Okay.
But that's it. Now, obviously, we'll see what else happens. But, and I've got them beating Houston Baptist in the first game. But it is what it is. Let's move on. Last one. West Virginia Mountaineers, Neil Brown in year 2. He's got offensive coordinator Chad Scott, and that's his second season. And Gerard Parker, that is his first season. Now, defensive coordinator is going to be by committee this year, they have announced, because Vic Kenning got let go. And, let's dive into some of this other stuff before we discuss that.
Okay.
But key players, defensive tackle Dante Stills, defensive tackle Darius Stills. So, obviously, brothers. There you go. Wide receiver Sam James. Projected favorites in 2 games this year. They've got a talent advantage in 4. Projected wins, 3.8. Returning production is 64%. That's number 5 in the Big 12. Not too shabby. Offense, they got 71% of their offense coming back. They went 5-7 last year. That was almost miraculous. I think you and I both had them picked to win 3 or 4 games.
Yep.
But they went 5-7. They found a way to get it done. And here's the deal. The offense was bad at everything last year. They were number 119 in success rate, yards per play, and points per drive. Now, the fact that they were number 119 in every one of those major stats is absurd. Neil Brown is known for his offense.
Yeah, but he's inheriting a team that from an offensive guy, by the way, who I really like a lot.
But they run different styles of offense.
But it's totally different, man.
And it's a complete rebuild. I mean, it was pretty bad. The offensive line was dreadful last year.
Well, Dana ran that team with transfers galore.
Oh, yeah.
All the time.
And JUCOs.
That's it. JUCOs and transfers. And therefore, when Neil Brown comes in, all of those transfers are gone. They're done because he's not recruiting. He's not building a pipeline of players.
Oh, it's the same thing that Les Miles was doing at Kansas.
That's right.
You're coming in and,
Kansas is a lot different than West Virginia, though. West Virginia, you should be able to recruit there.
I mean, the cupboard's empty. Like, the cupboard's just empty at West Virginia.
Is. Now, I love Neil Brown. I think this is going to be an uphill battle.
Oh, 100%. I mean, look, the offensive line was dreadful last year.
I think this year could be a disaster.
They dealt with injuries, 71% returning production, and another year under Brown and offensive coordinator Chad Scott. It hopefully kind of makes everyone more familiar with what's going on. The problem, though, is, I mean, how good are these guys, really? Quarterback Austin Kendall returns, but, Bowling Green transfer quarterback Jared Dagey replaced him in the fourth quarter of a 38-17 loss to Texas Tech. The Mountaineers won 2 of their last 3 games with Dagey at quarterback.
Yeah.
He looks to be the starter right now, and Kendall could win the job back or whatever, but he just wasn't very good early in the season. Defensive coordinator Vic Kenning was fired after racism and abuse allegations over the summer. So it'll be defensive coordinator by committee, which does not help things, but I don't know that they could be much worse than they were last year anyway. They began to improve later in the year. They gave up 20, and 17 points to Kansas State, Oklahoma State, and TCU in a 2-1 stretch to close the year at 5-7. That's better than what they were projected. They're only projected favorites in 2 games this year. Neil Brown is an incredible coach, and I can't find a reason on paper for them to improve. But, I mean, I trust this process. I've got them 3-7 overall. I got them 2-7 in the conference, and even that might be.
So I got them 1-8 in the conference.
Yeah, I mean it's rough. The only wins.
And I love
Kansas
Neil.
State and
I
Kansas.
think losing to DC is going to be a setback. I don't know what. Listen, I know enough to know. I follow a lot of defensive-minded coaches. I don't know why. I've always been more enamored with those guys. It's not just run whatever you want. You've got the D-line, you got the linebackers, you got the secondary, and you guys just do what you want. This thing has to work as a unit.
Oh, yeah.
At some point in time, somebody has to be steering that ship.
It's going to be rough. It's going to be rough.
I understand Bill Belichick went to a Super Bowl without a defensive coordinator. Won a Super Bowl without a defensive. You ain't Bill. Okay, I love Neil Brown.
It's completely different.
It's a little different. Handle the defense. Handle the offense. and let's get it up. Their cupboard's bare.
Oh, it's 100%. Yeah.
And I don't.
This is bad.
What's weird is it's 2020, so I have no idea how your recruiting expectations are even supposed to look for the following year. Because Neil Brown's a guy I think who can recruit. I think he can build this thing. Is he gonna get the opportunity to do it?
I think so. I think they understand the position that they were left in. So I mean, they're just gonna have to deal with a couple of, or a few crap sandwich years.
It's gonna be it's not just year 0, year 1. Like basically last year was year 0. This year, because of 2020, what we're dealing with, the defensive coordinator situation. But at some point in time,
continuation.
Is the administration gonna say that was your guy though? You hired him.
Yeah.
You brought him. We shouldn't have to have another setback year because of that. You have to be responsible. And that's what I don't know about with some of these administrations.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens here. That is going to wrap up the Big 12 preview for the 2020 season. Of course, if you want to see more sports content, head over to sbrpicks.com/CFB, or you can click on the links in the description to stay on top of all of the content that SBR has for you. For sportsbookreview.com, I'm Gary.
And I'm Chris.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the show.